Hey, welcome to this Getting Started Guide for Cycle. My name is Chris. I run customer success for Cycle. For those of you that don't know me, for those of you that do, thank you so much for joining. Today we're going to dive into creating a hub all the way through deploying a container and then redeploying that through GitHub Actions. To get started, we can create a hub. We'll just call this Demo Hub Redeploy and create. And the first thing that we want to do when we get started with a new hub is add a provider. And so we'll click into infrastructure and then providers. Today I'm going to work with Vultr, but if you want to work with Google Cloud or AWS or Equinix, you can consult the docs on how to add that provider. For Vultr, I click over into my account and copy my API key. And then I go ahead and select the Vultr and drop in that key and create. Excellent. So you can see now Vultr is live and verified, and that means we're ready to start deploying infrastructure. So clicking into servers and then deploy. Let's go for Chicago. And I'll just be deploying a simple small box today for this demo, and we can deploy. Great. So you can see the server is provisioning. While that's provisioning, let's set up some of the image management and as well as the generating the image itself. So to set up the image source, we want to click into images and then sources and click create. For this, I've set up a repo, so we're going to be using the Docker file type. So I've got this repo here. It'll be linked to in the video notes. We're going to grab the HTTPS URL. I'm going to name this website, and we're going to say it's Docker file. So I can paste in my URL here. The rest of this, I know that the defaults all work. So the branch is going to be main, the context directory is going to be the root, which is the default. The build file is that Docker file, right? And so this all relates to where the files are in the repo itself, and you can see the structure of that repo here as I click back over. Let's create the image source, and we will import an image. All right, let's go ahead and download. This image is semi-big. It's a node image. It's just a website. What we're going to do is create the environment, create the container, deploy that. We're going to set up GitHub Actions, and then we'll make a change. And then when we make that change, we'll fire off a pipeline that will re-image our container. So we'll be able to do that all on the fly. As that's downloading, let's check back on our server. Okay, and that's still in the provisioning. So we'll give that a few minutes to finish up and check on our source here, and that is good. And so while these two things are working away, let's go ahead and set up the DNS. So to add a DNS zone, I'm going to click on DNS and then into zones, and I will create. And as you can see from my form here, I've already set this one up before, so I know it'll work. If you need help on how to set up a new DNS zone delegation where you're delegating a subdomain out to Cycle, that also is covered in our docs. We'll create this zone, and you can see that I've got this little not verified sticker here. So what we want to do is verify the zone. Like I said, I've already kind of set this up, so I know that this is going to work. I click verified or verify, excuse me, and then it goes through the process of verifying that I have the ability to make records for this zone. So with that verified, let's click on back over, and it looks like our server is ready to go. That's great. And just to double check, looks like we're downloading there, so let's move on to environments. So now we're going to create an environment. So we'll click create. We'll call this demo environment, and we will select our production cluster and create a default environment. And for those of you that don't know, these environments, you can think of it like a VPC, but the thing to keep in mind is that the default network that's created is actually an IPv6 network. And so if I knew that I needed to work with an IPv4 network, I would click in and just add legacy networking. Now I'm comfortable with this setup using the IPv6 network, and it is something that we suggest that you adopt if you're capable of doing so. So we'll create this environment. Great, everything is online. We've got our load balancer, our discovery, the load balancer instance. So if you'll notice, and this is kind of fun to point out, you'll notice that the load balancer instance count is 0. So until we create a container that has public network enabled, that load balancer instance isn't going to be created. So you won't be paying for IPs or anything like that when you don't need them. I believe that the image finished importing. I saw a job go through, and it did. So let's deploy this container. We can call this website. We can make it stateless. We'll use the default deployment strategy. We only have one server. It really isn't a big deal to change the deployment strategy when you only have one server, and we don't have to constrain any of the node tags or constrain which server it qualifies to be deployed to. We'll go into our recent images and we will grab that. Now, I do want to be able to reach this, so I'm going to, let's do 8080 and 44380. What I was saying is I do want to be able to reach this, so I am going to mark this public network enabled, and I know that the internal port that it's listening on is 80, and so I'm going to set this up to listen on HTTP and HTTPS, and then deploy this container. And let's go back out and go ahead and start all of these. And here we go, and all of this will start to come online. You can see that our IP has been assigned. You can see that our load balancer instance has been created and is online. Let's go ahead and check this container. And the container is online. Excellent. So wonderful. Let's go over to our DNS zone. We want to add a record so that we're able to reach this. And I'm just selecting the environment that we created. We know the container's name is website, and we definitely want to have a TLS enabled record here. And so we'll create. And when it's created, you'll see that this is a blue generating certificate. And so sometime in the next minute to 2 minutes, that will become green and we will be good to go. While that's all going on, let's create this pipeline. We'll add reimage. And we'll go to the editor. And what this pipeline is going to do is it's actually going to create, import, and reimage the container. And we're going to set it up with a trigger key so that we can hook it into GitHub Actions, which sounds complex, but it's really straightforward. So let's make a stage here. We'll just call that reimage as well. And we'll add this step. And we'll create the image. And we'll give this a reference. And we're giving this a reference because we want to be able to use the contents created during this step in a step that's going to happen in the future. So from the hub, we'll say we want to use website and we'll create. The next thing we want to do is import the image. Again, we want to be able to reuse this, so we want to name the step reference. We want to say from the previous step, and we want to say create. So let's create that step, and the final one here is reimage. So we use a reimage container, add new step. Now we don't need to reference this step, it's the final step, so we're going to skip step reference. We're going to say from the hub, we want the demo environment, we want the container website, and then from the previous step, we want to use the imported step, because that's the completed step, and we want to create. Now we can save the pipeline, and we can go to the dashboard, and you can see a summary of the steps that this will execute each time it's triggered. So in order to be able to trigger this remotely, what we're going to use today is a trigger key. We'll call it demo, and we'll create. And it's as simple as, let's grab this info. So this curl request will actually allow us to remotely trigger this pipeline. And so what we want to do with that is get that hooked into our GitHub Actions. Before we do that, let's see, are we live yet? And we are. Okay, so here's the message. This is what's going on. And so if we go back over, let's go ahead and first update this. So we'll say, I've been updated. hello from React, and cycle. If I can type, there it is, and commit. And I'm doing this first because when I do change the GitHub action, it's going to fire off the action after I save. So let's go back to the code, and let's go to workflows and trigger pipeline. Okay, here we go. You can see that I've set this up to work like this before. Okay, so really all we're doing here is we're defining a job for GitHub Actions, and we're saying there's a single step. That step is run this curl command. Now, I'm demoing this out of our staging environment, so I do need to put this little modifier in here, but for you, when you're copy pasting out of your production environment, you will not need to modify this URL at all. Let's commit this. Added new pipeline trigger. And for those of you that are concerned with just pasting the secret in here, I have set this up before in a more secure way. All you'll do is just use the environment secrets and then refer to that environment secret here in the environment and as well in the settings. So pretty easy to do, but for brevity, we'll just do it this way. Okay, and this is 13 seconds ago. Let's take a look. All right, that looks like it fired. So let's get back over to the pipeline, and our pipeline is running. So let's follow this pipeline through what it's doing. Going over to sources, and you can see, so right now we're downloading. And so as this image downloads, the pipeline is waiting to do that next step. So we've created the image, we're importing the image, and then once that's downloaded, we will be using the reimage step to change the contents of the container from one image to another. Okay, and in the environment, you can see that this container is still running. It's going to give you kind of a quick peek here. We still have, this is some of the output from me visiting the website itself. And we do have some nice telemetry down here. If you haven't really been in the new portal yet, a lot of this is new. It's a lot more granular, and we really like how that came out. It's nice to be able to see some of this network traffic alongside the CPU and the RAM usage. So I'm going to close that out and take another peek over here. So 41 megabytes should be done here in just a little bit. Our staging infrastructure is a little bit less high powered than our production infrastructure, if you can believe that. So we're just going to have to wait for that to finish up. In the meantime, I'm going to pop back over to zones, and I just want to kind of recover something that I skipped over a little bit before. So when you saw me in here, you saw me add a linked record, and this linked record type is a way for you to create a record, and we can give it whatever name. At just means use the base domain, or I can say ASDF if I want to name it ASDF, and I'm associating that with a container. The nice thing here is that instead of making new records every time you add a load balancer to your environment, Cycle's handling all of this stuff for you dynamically. So if you were to scale up your load balancers to 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, and then run digs against the URL, you're going to get returns for the IP addresses relative to the amount of IPs available to serve that record. And so it's nice because you're not, once you create this, you're never really needing to maintain it. The other great piece of this here is that we have TLS enabled. And so we're able to just create TLS certificates, but we're also able to not have to deal with regenerating those. So for those of you that are new to Cycle, one thing that's nice is that once your TLS certificate is generated, Cycle will automatically regenerate that for you whenever it gets close to the expiration. I believe right now it's within 90 days, but it could be 60, and that's in the documentation as well. So I'm just going to remove this new one that we have. Let's take a quick look over here. Okay, it looks like we are imported. Let's take a look at our environment. Okay, so we should be doing, oh, it looks like we did. So we've re-imaged our container. You can see some of the other activity from creating that linked record, but the container itself has been re-imaged. So let's just take a quick peek at our pipeline, and the pipeline is complete. Excellent. So the pipeline has run, and let's see if we are cached. We've been updated. Awesome. So that is all it takes to go from no hub at all to deploying a server, creating an environment, creating a container, and then hooking in GitHub Actions. I hope this has been really helpful. Wherever you're seeing this, if you've enjoyed the video, please leave a comment or a like, and looking forward to the next video. Thanks.